Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live Q&A with none other than Kirsty Wirth from Kultured Wellness. There are lots of questions that you guys have sent us in advance and maybe some live questions that you might send our way, but I do acknowledge that we changed the time and it may not be the ideal time for you to come live and join us, and that is okay. We're going to send around the replay tomorrow, and I'll even tag everyone with the timestamp of when we answer your question so that you can just go straight to your question and hear your answer without having to listen to everything. But I get the sneaking suspicion that there'll be lots of people who actually want to listen to the whole thing, because what has blown me away is the number of people who have said how inspired they are, who have said they are ready to learn more, they are thirsty for more knowledge, and it has just opened up their mind to, one, how easy it can be, and two, what is possible when it comes to using food for nutritional medicine. So now, before I let Kirsty in, she's waiting in the wings there. Hello, Kirsty. No one can see you just yet, but I just want to say that I've loved engaging with you all. There's been a lot of engagement in this Fibre Challenge, and it's always lots of fun to chat with you and actually get to interact with you. This may or may not, we're not quite sure yet, but it may be the last time that we run a live coached session, live coached challenge the way that we have this time. We may be switching it over to more of an evergreen situation, which means that you don't get that live component like we do here today. So I hope that you've loved it, and I love also that you've jumped in. Now, I've also loved reading the success stories. I have seen quite a number of wonderful statements, especially today, coming through. People saying that they've brought their families along with, obviously, the transit time. Everyone jumps into that one. But more than that, people have been increasing their fiber in a number of ways, not just for them, but for their family members, which is always just like Kirsty and I just get a lot of satisfaction of seeing you actually implement changes in your life. We've seen a comment today. Someone's done something so simple as introducing a chia seed pudding into their day, and they've gone from stools that weren't so regular to stools 3 times a day. Like, that's a huge, fantastic success story from just a small tweak. And that's an example of what fiber can do in your life. So all those toxic compounds that were going round and round her body are now on their way to being more frequently evacuated and more easily evacuated so that she can feel better. A lot of people have realized that health isn't hard. Oh, there was this one comment today. Health isn't hard. I'm not missing out. I'm worth it. And I'm just doing what makes me feel fantastic. Yes, that's so great. Okay, I'm going to let Kirsty in here. But before I do, I'd like to just remind you, I'd like to read her bio for you. I know that I posted it in the group a little while before we started, but it's been a while. So I'm going to read it to you. And before I do that, I also want to remind you that by registering for the Fibre Challenge, which does end tomorrow, day 10 is tomorrow, you've also registered for the free smoothie boot camp that is actually starting later on in the month on the 28th of August. So there's lots of wonderful extra education that you're going to get there, as well as the ability to work with us to get your freezer blend ready. So there's lots. I mean, you've already seen, a lot of tricky little things we do for smoothies in that day that we did breakfast. There's lots more where that came from. So join us for the Smoothie Bootcamp coming up then. And of course, we're going to get you some more information on how you can work with Kirsty to progress your gut health. And I'd like to talk with Kirsty a little bit about that at the end for those people who I know are waiting in the wings for more information on that. Okay, let's read Kirsty's bio to you real quick, and then we're going to welcome her in. Okay, so Kirsty Wirth specializes in education, and I'm just going to read from my phone here. It's a bit hard to see. And is a qualified teacher, integrative health coach, and a mother of 2 children. Kirsty has held lecturer and teaching and research positions at the University of South Australia and Monash University, has a background in business and HR, and is a passionate outdoor enthusiast. Founder and owner at Kultured Wellness, Kirsty specializes in the management of clients with a wide variety of gut-related chronic health issues. Kirsty has extensive experience in this field, yes, and heads up a team of naturopaths, health coaches, and support staff. Kirsty embodies a dynamic approach to whole body health via the gut with a test, don't guess, and food as medicine philosophy. But beyond that, you guys, Kirsty's a friend of mine, and she has helped our family, my own personal family, a lot. For anyone that hasn't sort of been around stacked whole food blends for a while, one of our children was debilitated with anxiety to the point where she couldn't attend school for more than a couple of hours a day. Now, we did a stool test with Kirsty, and it turned out that she had some parasites that were really well known to cause anxiety. And so we, under Kirsty's guidance and with her health coach guiding us and holding our hand, we eliminated those parasites from her system. And our daughter was just so fantastic at throwing herself in. She was so willing. And within 6 weeks, we saw significant improvement to the point where she was back at school. She was thriving. And, we spent the next 12 months continuing to work on her gut health, and she's just doing so well. And so I can't thank Kirsty enough. And I'm going to let her in. I could blab all day. Here we go. Welcome, Kirsty.
Hello. How are you? It's kind of funny being talked about, like sitting off in the wings. So.
It might be less awkward than actually being on screen listening in.
Yeah. And we've done well. We always match whenever we get online or do anything. We're always wearing the same color every time.
Always. We have telepathy going on.
Yeah.
That's insane. So how's your day? And thank you for making time for us. I know that you had a bit of a clash with your schedule.
Oh, look, thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry. One of my other greatest loves outside of the gut microbiome is netball and coaching netball. And, yeah, the girls always play at around 4:35, and I coach on Thursday nights. And randomly, they had a 7:20 game scheduled tonight. And I got the schedule in like late yesterday and was like, no, this isn't going to work. So thank you, everyone.
And I love that we can make both work. Coaching a beautiful team like that is so important. And, it's one of the messages that you promote is balance in life and being outdoors and contributing to the community. So we love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for saying hello in the comments too. Please come and say hi to Kirsty and I. Let us know who you are. We're actually using a streaming software service, so we can't actually see your name. So in the description of this post, you guys, you should be able to see, hopefully, a link that you can click that will just give Facebook permission for us to see your name so that we know who we're talking to. It'll only take a second. There's one click. All righty. Kirsty, so we get started. There's always so many questions.
Yes. Let's get started. Lots and lots of questions. Hey, Louise.
Hello, Louise.
Chantel. Awesome.
Lovely to see your names. Thank you for clicking that link, you guys. Sam, actually, I forgot to read this out earlier. Then we're going to hit our first question. Sam said today, this course has been so good. So much information from such knowledgeable teachers. It's left me wanting to know more. I'm looking forward to continuing this learning journey. I'm sure my body and mind will be grateful. How good is that, Kirsty?
I know. It's so cool. So cool.
So we've divided up these questions with a range of different topics. The first topic is stools. There's lots of questions about stools, and I love that we have this environment here that we can talk very openly about these usually personal questions that usually people don't want to go there. So I'm grateful that we've got this space for that. Then we're going to move on to some questions people have about food related to gut health. There's quite a few of those as well. And then just a few little questions at the end about hormones and cholesterol and working with Kirsty as well. Hey, Karen and Danielle and Trudy. Lovely.
Hi, Trudy.
All right, here we go. Let's start off with stools. Trudy, who is right here, she's from Perth. She has a question. I've heard it said that if your poop floats in the toilet, that you're eating enough fiber. Is this true, or is it an old wives' tale?
Well, actually, interestingly, if your poo floats, the first thing from a clinical perspective is that we want to look at is that you're digesting your fat. So often if your poo's floating, it means that there's undigested fat in your stool. So that's the first thing that we want to tick off. And if we look at the color of our stool, if the stool is yellow, if it looks a bit greasy, if it's even a lighter brown color, that's going to tell us that we're not digesting our fat and our gallbladder's having a bit of trouble squirting through that bile to make the brown color, to be able to provide that brown color. So ideally we want our stools to fall and drop. If they're floating, then its fat content hasn't been digested. So haven't actually heard that one about that if you eat enough fiber that they float, because it's more that I've heard it about the fat. So yeah, have a look at the color, Trudy, in your spare time and see what color it is and if there's any film on it or any signs of fat in your stool, but that's normally what it is.
I haven't heard that wives' tale either, to be honest.
Oh, me neither.
So just real quick, there are quite a number of things you can do to increase the bile production in your body. Would you just list out a couple of those?
Yeah, so the most important thing about bile is to make sure that you're including lots of bitter foods. So to stimulate that bile, bitter foods like eating some rocket beforehand, so stacking up your meals. So you'd have the rocket first in a little salad, and then after that you would have your protein and have your fat, whether that be avocado or some olive oil on top of your meal. A little shot of apple cider vinegar, some lemon, all of those, old school digestives. And when my digestive system was really, really bad, I used to just grate ginger on top of everything. And that would do digestion, stomach acid, and it would also do that bile from your gallbladder. So the ginger's does everything all at once. And then just making sure that our liver's nice and healthy as well. So our liver will talk to the gallbladder in that digestive process. So not putting too much stress on our liver with alcohol and toxins and lots of carbohydrate foods and sugar. But bitter foods, dandelion teas. Whenever you think about gallbladder, think bitter, bitter, bitter. And also the gallbladder needs to have fat to stimulate bile for it to work. So we never want to go low fat if we want our gallbladder to work. It needs to have that fat to kind of practice and oil the squeaky wheel. So the last thing you want to do is, if you've got a gallbladder that's struggling, is to pull out the fat. We need to keep it in.
I love that. Thank you. And I'm a huge fan of ginger too. Yeah. Danielle has said, would that be the same for toddlers, light colored and floating?
Yes, yep. Definitely.
Beautiful. Okay. And Ruth has thanked you for the answer of that too. All right. Roma has another floaty question. She said, why do some float and look bulky, almost fluffy in appearance, yet not loose and not diarrhea? So that would be the similar answer, right?
Yeah, similar answer. And then that's diet related. Like some will float and be bulky, and some will drop down, and it depends how much of that soluble and insoluble fiber. But we always want to remember our digestive system starts in our mouth and ends out the other end. So everything that we put in and all the different types of foods and how much fiber will end out in the toilet. And I'm surprised at it, because I was the same. I'm surprised we don't talk about that connection much. Like, oh, I ate this today, and then the next day you wake up and like high-fiving yourself because you had awesome stools because you ate so well the day before. I'm like, yeah, I got this. I nailed yesterday. Look at my stools. So, yeah.
One of our kids, who shall remain nameless for her own protection, said the other day, she said, Mum, I did the most amazing poop the other day. I looked in that toilet and I stood there watching that poo, and I thought, damn, that's a good poop. And I thought, yes, that's so good.
That's so all good. Right. Parenting goals for me right there.
All right. Tracy has the next question. She said, is it possible to have mild diarrhea, number 6 on the Bristol stool chart, but still be constipated. Over the last several weeks, my poops have ranged between a 4 and 7, but I've often felt like I haven't been fully eliminating, and the Sesame Seed Challenge confirmed that for her. Also, her normal stools are often quite skinny, not a thick sausage, not like the picture of number 4s. And I've started getting dermatitis around my eyes, which in brackets is a sign of toxin reabsorption with a question mark. Yes. The increase in fibre is definitely helping. I went 4 times yesterday. Will ensuring adequate fibre intake be enough to resolve this, or do I need to consider doing more? There was a couple of questions in there. Did you get it all?
Okay, yeah. I've got it open in another tab just in case I forget. Yeah, so the first thing is it's very common to have loose stools and feel constipated, and that's called incomplete evacuation. That's the clinical term for it. It's very, very common. So there's a few things. Sometimes it's about your position when you're actually eliminating. And so using a squatty potty or getting your feet up and having that sort of 90 degrees where your knees are up above your pelvis when you're eliminating, to allow for that whole channel to come through and to be able to eliminate properly. We need to do a screen share to show that. So how you eliminate is really important. So in nature and, traditionally, we should just squat, and it allows the appropriate alignment for all of our stools to come out. And so now that we sit very politely on a toilet, it actually stops us from being in the right alignment. So in my household, for example, in every single toilet, there's a little stool. And so as soon as it's, time to eliminate, we grab the stool, put our feet up, open up that appropriate alignment, and you can eliminate. So that can definitely happen. Another thing that can happen is if your ileocecal valve is quite blocked, and that is the valve that goes from the small intestine into the large intestine. If that's blocked, what can happen is little bits can sort of come through, but not coming through appropriately. And so then you can sometimes have loose stools and then formed stools. You can have formed stools and then loose stools. And it just shows that there's inflammation in the digestive tract. So we want to be looking towards that appropriate elimination. Going to see a chiropractor about your ileocecal valve is the best thing to do for that. And they can massage it, they can align it, and it can be a huge game changer for people, just sorting that out. Now, I'm going to go and find the question because the size as well. Also, my normal stools are skinny, not thick. So, yeah, the fibre is going to absolutely improve that and support that. But I would say it's more an ileocecal digestive situation, and then not having the appropriate microbes to bulk up that stool. So a few things there. But get yourself a stool. If you don't have a stool, a basketball is exactly the right height to stick your feet on whilst you find a pretty stool for your toilet.
Do you know that I've worked with my chiropractor on my ileocecal valve, and it's just fascinating how much chiropractors can work with.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Do you have any comments about the dermatitis around her eyes being related to?
Yes, absolutely. So our eyes are the window into how our liver's performing. And so if we're going to see any dermatitis around the eyes, it's definitely that there's been a recirculation of toxins or a buildup of toxins, and the liver's telling us it's not happy. So in that situation in clinic, we would encourage people to do coffee enemas to kind of really just stimulate, get everything moving, clear out that bowel, get things moving, and then you can get that appropriate, stool elimination and just get everything moving again. But yeah, the liver's not happy. You're probably really grumpy too if you've got dermatitis around your eyes, and that's not fun. No one wants to be grumpy.
Lachelle's actually said that her chiropractor said she was working on the valve as well, so that makes sense to her. Roma has said that she dreamt about passing a very impressive specimen the other day. I love this group.
That's so cool.
Okay, there's some questions coming through on the live chat. I'm feeling like I might circle back to those if we have time at the end.
Yeah.
And we'll go through so do continue to pop them through. We'll get to them if we have time. And we may have to, looking at the time and how many questions we have, we may just have to kind of scoot through a little, we'll just do as best we can.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just jotting down the time for people so they know what time. Husna has said, I eat a lot of fiber-rich foods and drink plenty of water, but still suffer constipation from time to time, her and the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on how to rectify that? And how does a good recovery diet look once we've had worms in the family? So let's talk about the first question first.
Yeah, okay. So if you've increased your fiber and you're still having elimination problems, the next step would be I really encourage people to step into eating fermented foods and making sure you're getting enough probiotics and you're getting enough prebiotics. Because if you don't have the appropriate microbes in your gut, they won't bind to that fiber and they won't eliminate effectively. So the next step on is probiotics. And then teaming up with prebiotics like, just onions and garlics and asparagus and just all the really fun foods that we eat anyway to support fertilizing those probiotics. So that would be the next step. And it's amazing how just introducing on a regular basis, a couple of times a day, fermented foods can be such a game changer. Really important.
And not needing to be overwhelming either. If you go, you're all in the Whole Food Community Facebook group. There's a guide just where the Fibre Challenge information is saved. There's another guide that I think is called something like Gut Health or Gut Balancing Journey. And that's kind of following our journey doing Kirsty's programs. And there's a lot of posts there about the fermented foods, and it's not scary. It sounds a bit scary, but it's delicious. It's not gross. It's actually beautiful. So don't be scared.
Yeah, it's so important. So I even noticed that if I have like 2 or 3 days off having my ferments and my yogurt and all of those kinds of things, I can see a change in my stools very quickly. So yeah, they're an everyday, just part of your life. You just get into a routine and it's easy once you're in a routine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when a family's had worms go through the family there, what's a good recovery diet? Husna has also asked.
Yeah. So a good recovery diet is lots of raw garlic because it's going to keep the worms at bay because they work on a life cycle of the moon and they come back. They're quite hard to eliminate. And so whilst you're recovering, keep the raw garlic in. So that might look like making really yummy pesto, for example, and just having heaps of raw garlic in the pesto and then popping it on your chicken or stirring it through some pasta or those kinds of things. And then a pumpkin seed paste is a really good one too. So pumpkin seeds stun the worms and then the fiber in the pumpkin seeds then eliminate them out of the body. So if you're having any recurrence or you're a bit, how's this going to go? The pumpkin seeds and the garlic will just keep things on top of, or just keep you on top of things. And apart from that, worms love fructose. They love sugar. They love fruit sugar. So as you're recovering, just keep the fruit really, really low. So just choose berries, really low fructose, low sugar fruits. And then also keep your sugar at an absolute bare minimum so the gut can recover. And then, lots of fermented foods and lots of digestive aids because the stomach acid is what kills them off as they go through the GI tract and stops them from reaching the gut. So focusing on apple cider vinegars and bitter foods and taking time to eat and settle and stimulating those digestive juices and acids and so forth.
I love that. One of my goals at the moment, one of my decisions at the moment is to not eat unless I'm calm because I've noticed a huge difference. And of eating on the run, a lot of us do that. So I've noticed. So that's important.
Yeah. It's funny. I did a quite a big presentation on Sunday at a summit and I spoke for 2 hours straight. It was a very long presentation. and I wasn't hungry and wasn't comfortable to eat, or because I knew I wasn't going to digest my food until about 7:30, 8 o'clock that night. And I finished the talk at 1:30. My adrenaline was still too high. There was too much going on. I just could feel there was no way I was going to digest anything. So I just had, sips of things and really eat like some broth and had a little bit of yogurt and stuff. And then, finally calmed my nervous system. And then it was like, it's on. I need some food. Give me something.
Amazing. And look, I've seen a few people in the group talking about how even just the process of this 10 days together has helped them listen to their body more. And there's a question about that coming up. So we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
All right. Jessica, 3046. Jessica has asked, my 4-year-old is usually a 4 on the Bristol stool chart, but then right at the end, it kind of turns to a 5 or a 6. And no one's been able to explain to her, why that's a problem or, why it's happening.
Yeah. So that will be basically the answer to the other question that we had before. So that's that incomplete evacuation. That's the digestive system being inflamed, so that ileocecal valve, and then also just not having a diverse enough microbial community to digest all of the different, macros that we have. So digesting the carbohydrates, the protein, the fats. So some will digest and some won't. And so I would be looking at the diversity, so adding in fermented foods and, looking at that whole digestive picture, being calm, making sure you can digest, don't put your kids in front of the TV when they're eating, all those kinds of things.
So isn't that just such a common sense answer? We sometimes we overlook these things.
Yeah.
Danielle said that she's celebrating the fact that she's made boosted brownies, a mix of different fiber-rich flours and linseeds and chia seeds and black beans. Thanks for the inspiration. So good, Danielle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had several people asking a similar question, so I'm just going to bundle them together. Some people had short and long transit times, but also split into 2 different stools. So the first stool was like a very short transit time with some sesame seeds in it. And then they waited, beyond the 24-hour mark, and then the rest of the sesame seeds would come out. So what do you say to that?
So our vagus nerve, which is responsible for the peristaltic action that moves our food down. So obviously it starts, in our esophagus and helps all the food get pushed down. That peristaltic action is driven by our vagus nerve, which is our nerve that tells us if we're safe, if everything's okay. It sends messages back to our brain to say, yep, all cool, digest your food. And so when that vagus nerve, that nervous system is feeling stressed and overwhelmed, it might let a little bit through. But when we're in overwhelm or we're working really hard all day, or there's just a lot going on, our vagus nerve will sense that we're too busy to actually digest. And it won't then send the appropriate messages to say, hey, there's food in here. Can you please push it out? The vagus nerve will say, look, we're a little bit stressed. Don't have time for that. I'm over here creating all of the neurotransmitters and glucose and everything for the stress response. So when it's split up like that, that's more of a stress response. The vagus nerve isn't so happy. And then when it's a short elimination time, that's showing us that there's inflammation in the GI tract. And then when it's too long, that definitely tells us that that tone, that vagal tone is low. So our body doesn't really have the right, nervous system response, that resilience to digest our food, along with all the microbes that do that in there too. So it's also probably not enough microbes to make it happen, to send it through. We forget underneath it all subconsciously, our body is constantly trying to work out, is this a safe environment to digest my food and make a poo? It's like that simple. Then most of the time our nervous system's going, no, it's not safe enough to make a poo right now. I'm too busy about coaching netball and school lunches and lunch boxes and working and all the rest of it.
I am astounded at the laundry list of negative impacts of stress in our life. It's something that I'm personally learning so much about and ruthlessly trying to reduce in my life, because I'm noting the cascade of effects that it started to have in my life. So I feel like we should do a whole segment just on stress. But suffice to say, and that's such a beautiful explanation of long and short transit times, which is something that we did promise in this live, which I forgot to touch on. So thank you. So that's the reason that we have a short transit time or a longer transit time. And I love those answers.
Yeah. So even driving to pick up Noah from school today, I'd come straight out of, I've had a massive consulting day today, literally walk out, pick Noah up. And people must think when they're driving past me, I'm picking my nose, because I do all of my breath work, alternate breath works, and do as I'm driving to school pickup, and I'm doing all of my breath work to calm my nervous system down after such a heavy consult. So when I get home, I'm ready to have, something to eat, ready for my kids, ready for the next phase. And it's just amazing working on that breath work. I notice when I digest my food and have rocking stools the next day, and when I don't. It's out of control. So if you're driving on the Sunshine Coast and you see me doing this, I'm not picking my nose. I'm doing my breath work, okay?
I love to hear you say that. It's something that I've also used as a trigger for me to do my breath work, though I'm not picking I'm not holding my nose as I do it. Maybe I should do the box breathing. But now I've found that when I get in the car, I start to breathe. My exhale goes, extends and goes slower, just because that's such a habitual practice for me now. And it's really helped me, because as parents, we're often in the car multiple times a day. So it's just such a great trigger to dip into that parasympathetic state multiple times a day and retrain our neural pathways that we are safe and that we don't need to be on alert all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Belinda. 37, 18. Okay, so how can stools appear normal when you have a low fiber intake? Belinda was surprised because she calculated her fiber and she was quite surprised it was so low. But, she was getting some good falls on the Bristol stool chart. So can you explain how that can happen?
If you've got really great diversity in your gut, and if your microbes within your gut have been trained to sway towards digesting more protein, for example, if you've got a higher protein diet, or digesting more of the carbohydrates, even though they're not high fiber, but carbohydrates, our microbes will adjust to our footprint, our microbial footprint. And if there's no inflammation there, then they will still produce a pretty good stool. So obviously the fiber is going to absorb cholesterol, hormones, and all of the wonderful things that we need for our body to remain optimal. So we always want that type of fiber in there. But if we've got a pretty healthy gut, it will adjust to that footprint, to what the food is coming in, make that new footprint, and it will produce a really good stool.
Beautiful. Thank you. Someone's asked there, how can we tone the vagus nerve? I think there's some bullet point answers you could give without even needing to spend too much time on that, Kirsty. Do you want to just listen at them?
Yeah. So to tone your vagus nerve, the best one is to sing. Always singing, constantly singing. Gargling is really important. If you live near the ocean, just diving through a wave will stimulate the vagal tone. And another one's a mammalian dive, where you just plunging your face dead into some cold water and holding your breath for as long as possible. So all of those, but family sing-alongs, there you go, done your vagus nerve for the day.
So good. So good. All right, Carla's asked, she ranges on the stool chart, on the Bristol stool chart, from a 1 to a 5. Could it be that she doesn't always get time to go to the toilet when she's working? Is it just that she's not listening to her body and responding appropriately?
Yes. I bet she's either a nurse or a teacher, probably. I'm convinced that half of my gut problems was probably on my teaching, and especially when you're working in the outdoors and you're guiding and hiking, and all of your bowel movements and going to the toilet is around the bell going, or going to do a lecture, or being out in the bush, and you can't just kind of like duck off behind a tree with year 6 kids that you're out and about with. So yes, it'll be that the cues have been ignored. And when the cues are ignored, the vagus nerve goes, not a good time. We'll check back in 24 hours and we'll see what's happening. So yeah, I would say it's a very busy life.
Yes, beautiful. That's a nice, simple answer. Thank you. Jessica has the next question. She says, the chart says that a number 5 can be caused by a lack of fibre. However, her 4-year-old will often get stools that are a 5 or a 6 when he does eat quite high fibre foods. Particularly pears and whole grain bread seem to be issues for him, and bizarrely capsicum, she said. Can a 5 or a 6 be caused by either too much fibre, or is there something else that she needs to look at adjusting in his gut?
Yeah. So if ideally, when you've got a rocking stool, slowly but surely you should be able to increase your fibre, and you have some changes. You might get a little bit of bloating, you might get a bit more gas, but after a day or two, or a week, that all balances out and it's perfect. If you are introducing fibre and you get loose stools, cramping, it's watery, there's changes, and just from introducing whole foods fibre, it tells us that there's something more at play within the gut. And that's when I would test, not guess. So that in that situation where it was fine and then it kind of really didn't go so well, you're looking more at some bacterial overgrowths that generally cause that. So I would investigate that further. But first of all, you might want to go back and just increase it a bit slower, because kids, obviously their microbiomes are still developing. There's still changes to be made. So just start again and go low but slow. But if it's still happening, I would test that. There would be an overgrowth of some description there.
And look, I remember sitting with Kirsty on Zoom going over my daughter's stool test. And it is the most liberating experience as a parent to see the black and white data that tells you why your child's struggling in a certain area, but then also how you can fix it. There is just such an excitement around actually having a solution, particularly if you already know there's a problem that's, manifesting either physically or mentally, and it's to know that there's a solution is just so exciting. So I love that we have those tests even available to us these days. We haven't had them long.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Okay. Our last stool question is from Suzanne. Okay. She says she had a long transit time, and she said that this challenge or this dietary change through more fiber seems to be blocking her up. And is that normal? Usually it's a low carb, but now she's having more fiber. She's feeling quite constipated with some gurgling going on in the tummy too. Yeah. I did follow up and ask her, did she increase lots of fiber all at once, or did she go low and slow? Has she increased her water? But I didn't see a response just yet, so I don't know the answer to that. But do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously hydration is really important. Make sure that vagus nerve and, that stress response is okay. And then, the low and slow method's really important. But if she's been low carb for quite some time, it's going to take a while for that new microbial community to start to multiply, to be able to digest the fiber, assimilate it, and eliminate it. So it might just be a time thing of making sure that she just allows her microbes to grow. But, we need different types of fibers to grow different types of microbes in our gut. And we want over 200 different types of species in our gut, which is a lot. Most people that I see have about 4 species, not that bad, but really limited species. And so if we're, changing our diet to low carb, you can still do that really well with high fiber. But some people, in the process of learning that, cut out quite a lot of fiber, and you completely change that microbial footprint within your gut. So it takes a while for that to come back around again. And if it doesn't, then yeah, there's something probably bigger at play there that we'd want to look at.
Great answer. Thank you. We are switching gears now away from stools. As fun as that was, it's always fun to go there. Now we're going to talk about how particular foods impact gut health. And look, there is a question in the live chat that I think let's just pull that up now and talk about that one first. I think it's a topic of interest for lots of people that I've seen in the group too. So Kirsty, you can see that question there. What are your thoughts on lectins and their said negative impact on gut health?
Yeah. So what I think we need to do is back up the bus and stop vilifying food and stop vilifying compounds and think about how is our body going? Is our body able to digest food? Is our body inflamed? How's our particular gut going? And then that's going to give you a really great insight onto whether your body in particular can handle phytic acid, lectins, gluten, all of these things, because we can get into this kind of storm of being concerned about this food. And then like over the course of the last 15, almost 20 years of like gluten-free. And then it's been about 20 years now since I changed my diet. First it was gluten, and then it's salicylates and amines and lectins, and there's all these compounds that people vilify, but we forget to turn it around and go, can I digest that? So it's really difficult for me to say what my thoughts on lectins are, because for some person it will be absolutely fine. And especially if they're in Italy on holidays, sunbaking all day long, and there's, just loving it up. And then there's other people that it's just not right for them because their gut's inflamed. They've got a gut infection. They live a really stressful life, and, they've got past history of trauma or something. So when we look at questions like that, I love to reflect on ourselves and think about, can I digest that? So for me, for example, nightshades, I know for me that with my knee injuries and all my netball accidents, the night before I play, quite a hard level of netball, I won't have tomatoes and I won't have any of those high nightshades because they flare up some arthritis that I have in my knee from all of my old injuries before I changed my diet. And so for me, I just know that I'm not going to be able to digest it as well, and it could cause an inflammatory thing. And then to go and play sport on it the next day is not fair to my poor knees. So getting to know yourself, understanding your digestive system, and really getting to know what your body can handle will answer the question. So
I love that. We're all such individuals, aren't we? And it's these, one size fits all approaches to diet don't rarely work.
But they're very hard to digest. So if someone wants a bit of an answer to that, they're very hard to digest. And so if you've got gut problems, if you've got mental health problems, if you've got autoimmune conditions, if you've got anything going on, I would take it slow. I would, ferment things and just be really cautious that your digestive system's not at its robust capacity.
And I guess the next question to that would be, there's one concern where perhaps we can't digest them very well, but also some of these compounds are said to block the absorption of particular nutrients. And so what do you say about that?
Yeah. So if your gut microbiome's really struggling, you don't have much diversity, and your digestive system is inflamed, you're not going to be able to extrapolate the zinc and the B6 and all the nutrients from your food, full stop. So then if you start eating a food like a lectin that binds to your zinc and B6, now we're in trouble because there wasn't much to start with because the gut's not absorbing it. And then we're having a food that will bind to what little you're absorbing. Then there's not much left for our immune system, for our, hormones, for our breaking down cholesterol and building up stomach acid. Like the amount of zinc we need to make stomach acid's crazy. So if you're flat and low, especially if you've got an autoimmune condition, last thing you want to be doing is eating, anything with lectins in it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a very topical conversation at the moment, and I think lots of people will benefit from that. Okay. All right. Let's switch gears into the pre-submitted questions. Julie said, and what a great question this is, Julie. Can a person have too much fiber, and what would be the symptoms of that?
I don't think people can really have too much fiber because it reaches this satiating point. Fiber is wonderful. It makes you feel full and you feel satiated. So in the end, your body will know. But at the start, as you go from kind of 0 to hero, if you have too much fiber and your body's not ready for it, yes, you can have too much fiber. And it might cause a bit of a dysbiotic change. You might get some loose stools and some gas and those kinds of things. So you go low and slow, and then you do reach a point where you're like, oh, that just feels right today. And you can get into more of that intuitive eating, that understanding of feeling full and what your body needs.
Yeah, lovely. Christine wants to know if the fiber value of food actually changes as we cook it.
So there's some cool foods that actually, when you cook it and then you cool it, it forms a resistant starch. And so it's different to fiber, but it provides food for the microbes that then feeds those microbes that can convert all of that fiber and help to support making of your short chain fatty acids, which is energy, making B vitamins. So when we talk about cooking, you want to be looking at resistant starches over the actual fibers if you're wanting to upregulate or, downregulate. But from my understanding, it doesn't change the fiber content so much, the soluble and insoluble. It's more those resistant starch foods. So potato, sweet potato, and cooked and cooled rice are the main ones.
And look, I love the advice that one of your health coaches gave our daughter when talking about resistant starches, that it's so great to make a batch of rice, more than what you need for today, put it in the fridge for the next few days. And then as you're, eating a meal in the coming days, you can just put the cold rice on your plate and pour the hot food over the top of it. And it's enough to make the meal warm without having to reheat the rice so much that it does alter that resistant starch. You can reheat gently, of course, but it's just such a great, easy way to get resistant starch into our day.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is from Samantha. Do you find the need to supplement with vitamins? What a controversial one that
is. If you're feeling well and you're energetic and you're sleeping well, your skin looks great, your nails are growing, your hair's nice and short, like all these things that are the barometers of health. If that's all going well for you, no, you don't. We want to be getting all of our nutrients out of food. We want to use food as medicine. Sometimes if you're recovering from something and we know that your gut microbiome is struggling to absorb nutrients and you're recovering from an illness or you're really flat in energy and having a lot of trouble, then we will, like in clinic, we'll prescribe supplements, but we'll always still use food first. So if we know someone needs B12 or B6, we'll get them to try liver pate first and see if that works, and then go for supplements. But ideally we want to be using a food as medicine approach, but whilst we're recovering, sometimes we need a little bit of help, but it's very individual.
What's interesting is sometimes in our smoothie challenges, we mention that a quarter cup of that steamed and pureed and frozen sweet potato that we often put in our smoothies provides us with this bountiful supply of vitamin A. And some people get concerned that perhaps it's too much vitamin A, but I think it's important to remember that you can't overdose on vitamins from food. You can, of course, overdose on synthetic vitamins in a supplement form, but when it comes to food, our bodies just know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to skip Cindy's question about whether we need to activate nuts if we have no issues digesting them, because we have covered that. Danielle had an interesting question here, 5430. She gets that we should have a diverse range of fibers, and I think here she's actually referring to the diversity dough that we showcased in our lunch video when we made the diversity dough quiche.
Yeah.
She says, can I make a staple lunch for the week and then change it up next week to get different fibers? Or is having the same meal every day okay, as long as there's this large variety of different fibers in that one meal?
Interesting. So ideally we want to change it up. So we do want to have all different types of fibers, but we're looking at across the whole week. So we don't have to kind of like, oh my gosh, I've got to have the ultimate optimum day. If we can do it across the week and change it up across the week, then it will be completely fine. So, in our household, because it gets busy, I've been, my husband's been in Tassie for most of this year. So I've been single parenting since January. And I know, so I'm kind of like blocking things at the moment. So it might be 3 days. We're pretty much eating similar stuff because it's all I can do at the moment. Then we'll swap it out and then we'll swap it out. So I know that there's this sort of beautiful rotation, that we're getting that diversity, we're changing it up, but within what I can handle. So yes, we're eating the same thing a couple of days, but then we're changing it and getting different diversity and also not getting sick of the same thing as well. So yeah. So I think look at it over a week.
I love that. Thank you. Di has said, sorry, I've got to remember to put these times in, otherwise it's a lot of hard work afterwards.
It makes a world of difference if you do it now. I love it. I was sitting there before going, this is a great idea. I'm going to do that. It's awesome.
She said, my naturopath did a hair analysis on me for certain foods. They've come up with a bunch of foods to avoid, and she's listed a few there. Is this forever, or will my system be able to cope with these foods once I get my beautiful microbiome working effectively?
Yeah. So no, it shouldn't be forever. So the aim is to find out why your body isn't able to digest those foods. So obviously most of the time it's intestinal permeability, and that our gut is quite leaky. And so we can't digest those compounds, and then they're leaking into the bloodstream and triggering our immune response. So we'd want to be looking at, why is my digestion not effective? Why can't I digest the food? And why is it leaking into my bloodstream? So once you answer all those questions, then you'll start to then be able to fix those issues. And when you fix those issues, then you can start digesting, and then you won't have the problems with the food. So it shouldn't be. I mean, there's certain compounds like gluten's not great for probably most people for the rest of their lives. There's compounds that a lot of people just shouldn't have, full stop, because it's not actually really food. But if it's beautiful whole foods, then yes, you should be able to have it.
Yeah, and those are the foods that she's listed off: some capsicum, tomatoes, eggs, and Brussels sprouts. They're all lovely foods.
Yeah. And those tests I'm not a fan of those tests because of that intestinal permeability and your leaky gut. They're just going to register whatever you've eaten in the last 3 or 4 days, because what happens is you've just got those compounds that are leaking into the bloodstream. And so, whatever's in your diet, you're going to react to it, and it's going to show up in the tests. And then if you go back and do the test again, it will be, if you haven't fixed the leaky gut issue, it will just be whatever you're eating at that point in time. So you can get on a bit of a merry-go-round. So focus on healing up the digestion, healing up the permeability of your gut, and it will make a huge headway forward.
And look, I won't get too distracted on this, but I think you'd probably give a similar answer to those allergy tests that are out there that kids will often do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Lisa's husband has been told by the GP after a CT scan that he has diverticular disease. Apparently he was told to have a low fiber diet. So she's questioning it. She knows how important fiber is. What is the process that you go through when working with people with this disease?
Yeah, so diverticulitis is a really, it's obviously the gut is really inflamed. There's pockets within the digestive tract that is really inflamed, and there's often stool in there, elimination's not effective. And so when that's happening, yes, fiber is the worst thing that you can have. So when we treat that condition in our clinic, we go on broths and soups and purees, very, very, very low fiber to basically put a cast or, put a bandage around our beautiful gut microbiome and just give it a rest. So I absolutely agree with the doctor on that, which is, I don't often say. It's something I don't normally say. So, totally agree with that. And that's what we need to do. But we want to, why? So diverticulitis is just the gut's inflamed. But your next question is why? And so is there some Clostridium difficile in there? Is there some Biophilia Wadsworthia? Like, these are all the ones that are known to cause that diverticulitis. So is that happening? And then the treatment to fix that is really important. So just don't stop at the name of something that basically is you've got all these symptoms. Keep going until you find out the reason why it's happening.
And I wonder how many people out there will stop having fiber when diagnosed with this and then just, like you said, leave it there. And that's where they stay for their life.
They do. They leave it there, stay there for the rest of their life and just bleed out of their bowel, and no one kind of improves. And then there's just a lot of steroids and, you don't need to go down that path. You don't need to.
That's great advice. Okay, Carol has said, sometimes I can't face normal food like chicken, pasta, or rice, certainly not beef. I just want what I call baby food, like bland, warm, smooth, and mushy. It feels like the lining of my stomach is super sensitive. Cooked veggies are okay. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and it seems I'm possibly dealing with gastroparesis. You all know what that is. My doctor suggests white processed foods, no whole grain, etc. What would you suggest, please?
Oh, that's so funny. So the gastroparesis is also your gut's inflamed, and it also your gut is inflamed and your vagus nerve is not working effectively. So that's what that diagnosis is there. So when you have that diagnosis, number one, it's a stress response. Your vagus nerve is shutting down and your gut is inflamed. But why? So your body, this person is intuitively knowing that anything more than warm, beautiful, nourishing, pureed foods is going to be too much because of the inflammation in the gut. So it's great. Stick with it. Definitely don't introduce white, bland foods because they don't have any nourishment in them. And often when the gut's inflamed, there's a dysbiotic picture in there. And if you introduce the white, hot rices and all of those white foods, then they feed that infection. So yeah, I would definitely do a test on that and find out why the gut's inflamed. Look at your stress response. It's always a vagus nerve thing as well. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. It's the same as the diverticulitis. It's just a name and then off we go.
Yeah, that's right. Shannon said, look, it's okay if you don't know the answer because we don't know much background here, but she's recently been told that she has a meat allergy. She used to use bone broths for gut health. Would this still have the same allergens in it?
Yeah, that's a really tricky question because is she anaphylaxis? And if she is, that's a completely different answer than if she's just intolerant or has an allergy, but it will still have the same compounds in it. So yes, bone broth will still be an issue as the same as having meat. But yeah, I would definitely do a stool test if someone's telling you you've got a meat allergy. So
yeah.
No one has a meat allergy. They have an inability to digest the meat, and then the body is responding inappropriately to that. So get your gut tested. Get your gut tested. Save your life. Change your life. Just do that.
Now, this next question, I'm sure you could talk forever and a day on. This is your jam. Shay has asked, do you have any fiber recommendations for those on a ketogenic diet?
Yes. And I know Shay. Hello, Shay. You might even be listening. Yes, so many things. So we're always talking about fiber, but we forget that vegetables have so much fiber in them. And so we don't always need to lean into, grains or different types of nuts and seeds or this or that. We can really lean into, like you said, sweet potato. Brussels sprouts are amazing. Broccoli, cauliflower. and we can get a robust amount of fiber through our vegetables. So I think that we just need to kind of reshape where we think fiber comes from. And then secondly, we can ferment it. So obviously the diversity dough is a classic example of that. If we ferment the fiber, we take out the carbohydrates so we can stay in ketosis, but we still get all the fiber. And then fermenting fruits as well, like dates especially. If you want to really up your fiber, fermenting dates and in your then, you know, putting them in your cooking and so forth. You probably know more than me, Lainey, how much one date has in fiber. Can't remember, but it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you just ferment that out and then make little keto bliss balls, and then you have some Brussels sprouts and a bit of this and that, you're done. You've got your fiber for the day. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be rice, and it doesn't have to be, you know, the traditional wholemeal bread that we think. It can just be literally in our foods and fermenting things.
Yeah. And look, it's amazing what you can welcome back into your life once you start to ferment your foods.
Yes.
As we were going through Kirsty's gut healing program, and we were on a therapeutic ketogenic diet, we would still have, it was during summer, and we'd have these beautiful mango smoothies, and the kids' friends would come over and they would just say these smoothies were delicious. Like it's not a hard thing to do either. Like if you're talking about fermenting dates, all you're literally doing is putting dates in a glass jar, putting a little bit of coconut water kefir that you can get from Kirsty on there, topping it up with water and leaving it sit on the bench for a day or so. Yeah. And then you're done. You just put it in the fridge and you're done. So it's not hard.
No, it's just rhythm and routine, you know, and then you're done.
Okay, so the next question is from Krista. When you consume foods with probiotics, does the bacteria make it through the stomach acid alive to reach the large intestine to be beneficial? And if they do, can they become colonized, or is it just transient?
It's a really good question. The answer is yes, they can. Most fermented foods mainly have lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains in them, and they're actually commensal bacteria. So they're designed to come in, they hang out for a little while, and then they'll move through the digestive tract. So lactobacillus and bifido strains don't colonize for long periods of time. We need to have our fermented foods for that reason. So yeah, you'll see them in there, but not for long periods of time, but you need them. And then what was the question about, will it survive the stomach acid? Yes, it will, because fermented foods about a pH of 3.5. Our stomach is a pH of 1. And so it will go on through quite fine, and the probiotics seem to survive and reach it. So we do a lot of before and after testing in people's gut microbiome, and we can see after, in that before and after, when they've had, you know, the yogurts and the sauerkrauts and they've had all those fermented foods, we can actually see it in their testing, because those commensal strains will colonize for 3 to 5 days and then move on. So yeah, they do. I've got more concerns about the powders. They don't really last through the digestive system that well, unless we prescribe ones that have got enteric coating. We prescribe ones that have got very specific pHs that will last. But yeah, I would definitely use, fermented foods every time.
And look, that brings us to our next question from Melissa, who said, do probiotic capsules actually help to balance the gut microbiome, or do they make things worse? I'll wait until you've answered that question before I.
So for some people, if you choose the wrong strains, so if you're just randomly just picking up something off the shelf, if you choose the wrong strains, it can really set things off in a negative way. So yes, sometimes they can make matters worse. And then choosing a probiotic that obviously hasn't been prescribed for you, if you're just choosing something off the internet or from the chemist, it's just kind of like throwing a stone into the ocean. We've got trillions and trillions of microbes in our gut. It's like 40 something trillion. So popping a little teaspoon of probiotics into that is you got to know what you're up to. Otherwise you just waste a lot of money. which I've done that in the past, and I'm just wish, oh my gosh.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, a lot of these probiotic brands that are out there might only have, say, 7 different strains, maybe 12 if it's a really good one. Whereas if you're having, like, I know that I'm banging on about Kirsty's ferments a lot, but we have it routinely here in our home for a reason. And, you know, is it your yogurt 42 billion CFU?
In one cup of yogurt, it's 41 billion CFU. Yeah.
So it's just a completely different ball game, because you're getting such a great diversity as well in say a fermented food like that, as opposed to say 7 different strains in a capsule. Is that right, Kirsty?
Yeah. So if you went into a chemist, you know, you're really going to get about 3 million CFU. You might get 20 million CFU, but like our yogurt has 41 billion CFU. So it's quite therapeutic, which also means you've got to be cautious when you introduce it, because it's so therapeutic. People do get changes in their gut. They might find that they get a bit of bloating, they get a bit of wind, gas, they might get a few cramps and so forth, because it's making a really beneficial change. So just got to go nice and slow when you introduce it.
I remember when we first started on your apple juice kefir, and warning, it's slightly addictive in our kids. It's just like having apple teas. For anyone who's had apple teas, it's just like that. And our kids a little bit nutso on it, and we definitely had some of that going on. Okay, Belinda.
So whoever just said histamine, they've got histamine, so it's a no to ferments. First of all, that's a very outdated kind of understanding of fermented foods. But also the Kultured Wellness cultures have ferments that actually downregulate and consume histamines and help them to leave your body. And they activate the DAO enzyme in your gut microbiome that helps you to regulate those histamines. So the Kultured Wellness ferments, if you've got histamine problems, it's even more important for you to have them. But it's understanding your detoxification pathways and making sure that you introduce the ferments, but you're doing it slow, and you're using things like activated charcoal and bentonite clay to bind to the histamines to move them out of your body. But hopefully one day we'll stop this histamines and fermented food things, because it's so much bigger than that. So yeah, don't fall into that trap. Don't fall into that trap.
Would you say the same about bone broth?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
So histamines are either you don't have the gene, the DAO gene enzyme in your gut, which means you can't downregulate it. We sequence genes in our clinic all the time. It's not that common to have that enzyme deficiency, but most of the time there's the pathogens within your gut, the really bad ones, they're the ones that create histamine. So you don't have a histamine problem. You've got microbes in your gut that are creating histamines, and we need to get to that and solve that problem. So, and then just using detox tools to bind it. So I have the enzyme, the DAO problem in my gut, but then I just, whenever I have histamine forming foods, I'll make sure that I use a little bit of charcoal or some chlorella to absorb and bind to the histamines, rather than just taking all histamines out of, which I did when I didn't know better, and half your healing foods are gone, and that's a problem. So
that's such a fantastic answer for those who are facing that issue right now. Thank you. And yes, I have just put this comment up on the screen.
Someone just said, so throw out the list of histamines. Yes, I would, and go and get some help about why you've got histamine issues.
Can it be helpful to remove them for a time to test if that's an issue for you? Like if you remove them for 4 weeks, no,
because that's not the problem. The problem is that there's a detox pathway problem. Your liver's struggling, your kidneys are struggling, and your gut microbiome's out of balance. So you rather spend your energy healing the problem rather than understanding which histamine foods and changing your diet and So you know what it's like. It's a huge time and mental investment to change your diet. And if we're focusing on that, it's still not solving the problem. So you just get exhausted by it.
So don't use it as a diagnostic tool either. Just get a test done so you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I see so many people come into clinics. So I've got a histamine intolerance, and then and I ask them, how do they know that? And I just think so. And then we do the test, and the histamine levels are really low. It's actually not even anything to do with it. It's just they got scratchy and, all those sort of things, and thought that it was histamine. So
interesting. All right. Well, since we're
on the reasons why I don't like the internet is
yes.
And
while we're on this topic, I wanted to. Oh, sorry, I spoke over you. What did you say?
Oh, I was saying it happened to me. I was on a histamine and salicylate merry-go-round for like 3 or 4 years, and on a FODMAP diet for 3 or 4 years, and just I went through that spiral of vilifying food, or thinking it was this or thinking it was that, and adjusting my whole life around it, when it's just such a tiny picture of the whole umbrella of our bodies. And that's just, it's a benefit of having so much, clinical experience and knowledge in the end, is it's like, when you look at it from the big picture, then you can understand it rather than it being one little thing at a time. Yeah.
I love that. Have you looked at that question on the screen?
All right. Speaking of fermented foods, if we use your cultures to create our ferments, would be closed ferment. However, isn't it also partly wild, given different things will be picked up during the making of it in our environment, in our hands, and so forth? That's such a great question. So yes, you will possibly pick up some microbes in your kitchen when you're making kraut. You're, obviously squeezing it, you're getting a bit of brine, even when you're pouring in the kefir to make the ferment. But what generally happens is the culture has so many microbes of the selected cultured ones that we've chosen, they outcompete with the other ones in the initial stage of the ferment. So then most of the time you're left still with a cultured ferment, not a wild ferment. So if you didn't add the kefir and it was just the brine, then it won't be so much of a, then it will definitely be a wild ferment. But because the culture is out competing, it really just overrides it because there's so many microbes in the culture. Good question. Right. I love that. Yeah. Someone's thinking about microbes. That makes me happy.
Yeah. If that's the result of this challenge, then I'm sure you'll win.
I've got very little time left, I think.
I'm
sorry. I've got to feed Maya before she gets out on the court. Feed her. She's not an animal. Maya needs her dinner before we go and play. So
I can understand that. So do you want to I think there's probably 4 or 5 questions. So are you happy to kind of just shoot me an email, .point replies on those, and I can just post it in the group for those people?
We can do a couple more speed dial.
Right.
Do 2 minutes. I sort of was 5:45 are really going to run. So let's do a couple more.
If we've got 2 minutes left, can you just tell us actually, sometimes when we run these Fibre challenges, you will run a Kultured Wellness programs information session, because a lot of people are left with questions and their motivation is ignited to address some of the core, the root cause of what they're actually going through. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you're doing that this time because you've got lots going on in your world at the moment. So is there perhaps a replay of one that we can watch? How can people find out more about your programs?
So I spoke to Sierra today, and then she's found some time in my diary next Thursday. I think it's at 11:45. We'll confirm. So I thought I'll jump in to the group, and I can finish off these questions then actually, and then just talk a little bit about if you are going to come and see us in clinic, what are the options? What do we do? Where would you start? And just answer some of those questions about what we do in the Kultured Wellness Clinic and the varieties of ways that people interact with us in the clinic, because it's not a traditional naturopathy clinic. So I can discuss it then, and then I can answer a few of the other questions as well. But yeah, there's lots of different avenues to come through and work with us, whether you want to get some testing or want to learn a lot more about gut healing programs and food side of things and fermenting, and yeah, the list goes on. So no, we found some time. We were discussing it in emails today, and Sierra was like, I found some time. It's there. So yes, we'll get a time. I'll let you know what time it is. I think it's 11:45 next Thursday. So I can.
That's really great news. I'm sure there's going to be lots of happy people to hear that. That's great. I will make sure that I send it around on Messenger and announce it perhaps on an SMS so no one misses out on learning when that's on. Yeah. But for right now, I just want to give you a great big thank you, Kirsty. I know that in the comments, people are also saying thank you and how wonderful it's been and how fascinating. It's this whole other world that we just don't talk about.
I know. And I love, Lainey, how much you normalize it and it's those simple steps. And it's actually very grounding for me because I'm completely obsessed, enthralled in detail, and I love the science, and I get completely like lost in it. And so it's so wonderful doing stuff like this with you because it kind of brings me back to like, just make a change. Come on, peeps, let's just make a change. Like we're the best tag team, the yin and the yang. So I think it just works so beautifully if we can start like the chia pudding situation, and you can just have rocking stools by doing that and understanding why. So it's so, and I'm stoked to see it back. I've been jumping into the group and having a look around at the answers and having a look around, and it's really cool. Very, very cool.
Such a fabulous challenge. And it was almost 2 years. I looked at it, almost 2 years since we've run the last one. So it's been a long time coming.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there goes that COVID vacuum that happened. So that's amazing. Yeah. And I'm so sorry I can't stay for much longer. It's just one of those things.
But you've been generous with your time.
Yeah, I'll tap in next week. So next Thursday, and I can finish off those other questions, and I'm sure there'll be more of them as well.
Yes. I'll go through the live chat and add some more in there if you got some time.
Yeah.
All right. For the person who asked for the chia pudding video, I'll be sending replay links around to those videos that you missed, and you can have a little binge watch weekend.
I'm gonna go. See ya.
Thanks, Kirsty. Have a great night. Good luck with your netball team. Okay, everyone, I'm going to love you and leave you as well. Have a beautiful night. For those live, thank you. I know it's a really awkward time of day, so well done for being here. And we will see you tomorrow. Jordan and I are going to go live in the group at 12:30. I know that there's lots going on. There's a video to watch as well tomorrow, so let's just do what you can. It's our last video in the morning. It'll be live at the same time as always, 5 a.m. in the group, 9 a.m. on Messenger. That's going to be our last video that talks about the 5th superpower of fiber and how we can have fiber-rich desserts. And I may just share the world's best chocolate sauce recipe with you and make some delicious crepes that are very high fiber. So Danielle says, will I be opening the No Fuss Nourished method again? Danielle, yes. I have a little pencil date in my calendar for kind of sometime soon. For those who don't know, I do run a coaching program for parents who want to nourish their children and are not quite sure how to get them across the line, not just hiding things in their food. That's not really what we're about. Although we do give lots of tips on how to do that. That's one way to kind of get started before you then work on the bigger picture. But there are lots of ways that we can increase the nutrition for our family without them even knowing, but then also educating them to actually ultimately accept and embrace these beautiful whole foods that are good for them, so that you're sending them along as an adult with all the life skills they need to actually look after themselves. So yes, I'll be doing another free boot camp for that in the coming months, but first is the smoothie challenge. So, all right, you guys, have a beautiful night. Thanks for the question, Danielle. And we'll see you tomorrow with our last video. And then at 12:30, Jordan, my husband, and I are going to come into the group. We're going to do a little bit of a game show. We're going to give out some more prizes, a little bit like the pre-party, but we'll ask some questions. They won't be too hard, don't worry. But there'll be some questions about the content we've covered in the challenge, and we can throw out some wonderful whole food blends for you. We're going to give you the ebook, which is quite a robust ebook that kind of summarizes the challenge. as well as the micro actions you guys took. Has all the recipes in there. And we're going to give you a pretty good discount code to buy some whole food blends if that's your jam. If you just want to make it easy on yourself to get this diverse range of great whole food fibers into your life on the regular, then we'll have a discount code for you there too. All right, you guys, have a beautiful night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.